Welcome to another edition of the Watchful Citizen. Today our guest is candidate for District 3 City Council, Jane Raybould. Welcome, Jane.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
We're happy to have you here. Tell us about District 3 you're running in and a little bit about yourself.
Great. Well, District 3 is the southwest quadrant of the city. And it's a somewhat large district, but it's hard for people to visualize, and I can just give you a little bit of a description. Think of A Street. A Street is pretty much the northern boundary of my district. I have about 7 precincts north of A Street, so A Street to just about Randolph, but the majority of the precincts are south. So that's the northern boundary, and the eastern boundary is a jagged one. It starts out at 56th Street, and I have 2 precincts on 56th Street, and then it starts to go west. And then the next boundary is 48th Street, and then 40th, and 27th, and it angles all the way south down to Pine Lake Road, and then there's just a little triangle at the bottom southern tip of Yankee Hill Road. And then it goes out west, and the western boundary is the city boundary lines. But to give you an idea, West A Neighborhood Association is in my district, so people can recognize it goes past Pioneers Park, just a little bit west of Pioneers Park. Think of Coddington and A, and again, there's only a little bit of about a precinct and a half on the western side, north of A Street, so really pretty much south of A Street. And District 3 is the district Jonathan Cook, who is the current city councilman, has held for 16 years. And so Jonathan made a decision that he was not going to run again for another term. And so I feel very fortunate and truly honored to be running in District 3 and trying to fill the very large shoes that Jonathan Cook filled. You know, he was such a terrific advocate for our neighborhoods, our pools, our parks, our libraries. And so I certainly hope to continue in that tradition, and that is a big task because he was a terrific advocate. I'll just tell you a little bit about myself. I was born and raised here in Lincoln, in South Lincoln, just about 4 blocks where I currently live, and I went to Blessed Sacrament School and Pius X High School. I went on to Creighton University and graduated there and started my master's program in Bloomington, Indiana, where I met my husband, who was getting his master's in law, and then I transferred to Georgetown University and finished my master's. My husband finished his master's and then came to Washington, D.C., where we got married, and we raised our 2 children there. And I moved back to Lincoln a little over 12 years ago to work with our family grocery store operations. We have B&R Stores, which has the Super Saver Russ's Markets, and I am Vice President and Director of Buildings and Equipment. And B&R Stores Super Saver Russ's Market is an employee-owned corporation, and we have been around we just celebrated our 50th anniversary last year, and we are one of the largest employers in the city of Lincoln.
Wow, lots of things going on there. When you came back 12 years ago, did you get involved in politics right away? Could you kind of tell us what your route to getting into politics was?
Well, you know, I did not get into politics when I moved back. I was really fully invested in relearning the grocery industry because I worked in our stores all the way through high school and college, but then I went off to graduate school, and so I really worked pretty much up until, you know, in our company, but I was involved in a lot of boards. I was on the Lincoln Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors, the Community Health Endowment Board of Trustees, and a number of other boards in the city of Lincoln. So I was very active in the nonprofit area and just doing a lot of charitable outreach and community work. But it wasn't until the 2008 caucuses that we had that I really became engaged and interested in politics, and I was...
A lot of us did at that point. Yeah.
It was probably I think it was so energizing for so many people, and it was just fascinating because I knew we would be part of history. This was the first time Nebraska had the caucuses. So it was 2008, getting involved in that, and then going on and representing the county, and then going to the state convention, and then being chosen as a delegate to go to the national convention in 2008 was thrilling and exciting beyond words. And I think That's what did it for me. That really got me hooked. And as you know, I was a Lancaster County Commissioner, and then just recently, last year, ran for Lieutenant Governor with Chuck Hasselbrook, which was an incredible, incredible experience.
You were a Lancaster County Commissioner. How does that experience translate now into running for City Council? Is there some comparisons there?
There are some comparisons, certainly. It, of course, is a tremendous learning experience, understanding the difference between private sector, business, and the public sector, and just a tremendous experience in learning the ropes of government. Lancaster County is challenging because, you know, there are 5 Lancaster County Commissioners, and then we have a whole slew of other elected officials that are the department heads. So you have your county attorney, clerk of the district court, county clerk, county attorney, county engineer. So all these other department heads are elected officials. So it makes it somewhat challenging to have cohesive policy and certainly cohesive budget practices when you're dealing with a lot of elected officials. Now on the City Council side, you have a very strong mayor who is the administrative side of it, and the City Council is the legislative side of it, whereas on the county board, you wear both hats. You're the legislative side as well as the administrative side of it. But on the City Council side, you have a very strong mayor who appoints the directors of the different departments that serve at his will, and then you have the City Council. There are other elected officials, but they're the legislative side. So I would think it's a little bit easier for a mayor, particularly the way we have the mayoral system structured in Lincoln, to be able to enact legislation and policy and direction and budget a little bit easier. But it's certainly a wealth of experience, and I have to tell you that, you know, I think that's one of the reasons why I am qualified to go on to the City Council. It's amazing. There's so many committees that I was on where we also had a City Council representative. So for many of the committee assignments that you get, there's always a City Council person and a county board. And I can think of the Public Building Commission. I was the county board representative, and Jonathan Cook is the City Council representative, or Joint Budget Committee. I was the county board representative, and Lyrian Gaylord Baird is the city representative, and before Lyrian was Carl Eskridge. So there's a lot of overlap between the work that I did as a county commissioner and certainly some of the work that the City Council participates in on a number of joint committees. And so I feel like, well, you know, if I get elected, and I hope I get elected, and once I'm elected, I can hit the ground running. So there'll be a seamless transition. I won't have a learning curve because I've already been on so many of these joint committees and will, you know, hit the ground running.
Right. I know I was involved in government years ago, and at that time, in city government, and at that time, way back then, and I'm talking ancient, there was talk about combining city and county governments. Is that still something that you think is something that is good, or is it working now with the handshakes between county and city government?
Well, you know, Lincoln and Lancaster County really is astounding in many ways. We have so many interlocal agreements. We have 43 interlocal agreements, and we already have 6 departments that are combined and consolidated. So I think that really sets us apart from, say, Douglas County. And I think it's a great role model for other communities across the United States, but certainly other counties in the state of Nebraska. So there is a tremendous synergy and partnership going on. When I was a county commissioner, and part of one of the functions that we do, it's called the Common, where the city council members and the county board get together and we discuss issues of joint interest or policies or programs that we should look into. And when I was a county commissioner, we said, let's really look back into consolidation. Is it a way that we can create government efficiencies? Can we combine departments to reduce redundancy? Can we combine the departments based on their functionality for tax savings to our constituents? Budgets are tight, so we have to really be progressive and forward thinking and looking at ways that we can deliver government more efficiently. But the reality is we've been talking about consolidation for years and years and years and years, and so there's kind of a lurch forward and then we fall back 2 steps. You know, some of the best studies were done back in 1972 that gave us a roadmap on how the city of Lincoln and Lancaster County can consolidate on certain areas where it makes sense and where there's a return on the investment. And so they had discussions in 1972, they had them again in 1996, and last year we had the City-County Consolidation Task Force combined of a lot of amazing citizens. Some of the A-team, I called it, because they are the people that have been involved in both private sector and public sector, some had even been part of the previous consolidation task force, and their recommendations were the same. They're always the same. You can look at, there are two entities that really have an opportunity for consolidation if we have the willpower, if we have the political wherewithal to enact that, and that's certainly public safety is a way to combine both Lincoln Police Department and the county sheriff's offices, so that's one opportunity there. And then Public Works, looking at combining county engineering with Public Works. And those are the two that of course deal with our road infrastructure, road improvements, plowing of snow, road maintenance, you name it. And the same with public safety. They're both in charge of making sure our community is a safer one. So that has consistently been the recommendation, but is it easy to get there? Not always, because there are personalities that have to work together, and there are some, of course, hurdles that we have to get over. Some are legislative to make sure that that
I was
can
thinking
be.
of one would be the different taxing districts.
Sure.
You know, the city of Lincoln has a different, somewhat different than what the Lancaster County does. So there's some differences there that I'm not sure if that would take a constitutional change or how that would happen, but you pay a different rate for sales tax here in city than what the rural people do out in Lancaster County do.
And there are some elements of that would need a legislative statutory change to allow that enactment of some of that consolidation. Are we ready to combine the city and the county? I don't think so. Really, the best example of something like that should and could get done would be Douglas County and the city of Omaha. But we're even light years ahead on the consolidation of our departments that we have. You know, we have purchasing that is together, personnel, payroll, human services. So there is opportunity, and I don't want to give up that cause. And I think certainly when I'm elected city council, I want to revisit that and really try to come up with a roadmap how we can achieve the recommendations of the task force.
Speaking of wanting to be elected,
Yeah.
Can you kind of describe to us your campaign? How's it going?
Well, you know, it's going very well. I have to tell you that I have a great group of volunteers. It was very exciting as a candidate for city council, as a candidate for mayor. You have to get signatures from those registered voters in your district. So in January, early January, I started walking some of the precincts and knocking on the doors, and I was overwhelmed by their support and encouragement. I'd open up the door and they say, "Jane," they knew who I was.
They remembered you from prior campaigns.
Right. And they would invite me in and they said, "What are you doing walking? It's really cold out there." And they would sign it and, you know, come inside and get warm and go back out. So it was very encouraging. Certainly Jonathan Cook has been very supportive, and Mayor Beitler has been terrifically supportive. So I have a good team of volunteers. We've had some successful fundraisers, and looking forward to having a few more fundraisers. It's a little bit scary. I don't want to jinx it, but so far so good. I don't have an opponent at this point in time. So it makes it easier, but certainly we have a lot of great candidates that are running for city council, and it is imperative that we get them elected. Carl Eskridge, who's in District 4, is running for re-election, so we have got to get Carl elected. And certainly in District 1, we have 2 great Democratic candidates, Mitch Payne and Meg Michaelichuk. We have to do everything we can to get one of those elected. And so these are some of the tasks that are before us, and we have to be really focused on that. So if I don't have an opponent, I'm certainly going to be, I made a commitment to walk my precincts because I want to reconnect with them and get their input and feedback on a number of issues that are important to them, and certainly work towards achieving some of achieving and resolving some of their concerns. but I know I'll be walking for Carl, or I'll be walking for Meg or Mitch, because it's that important, and certainly for Mayor Beitler. It's real important that we keep our city moving forward, because I can't tell you, it is just amazing how many national rankings we're getting acknowledged for. One of the best places to raise a family, the best place to graduate from and start a business. So I think we have a terrific momentum, and really, to be honest about it, it has been built on the foundation of great Democratic mayors. I think, look, starting with Don Wesley and Colleen Sang and Mayor Beitler, we have built a great city. We have a vision. Our party has a vision to continue to make our city great. And it's an investment. It's an investment in Antelope Park. It's an investment in Pinnacle Bank Arena. It's an investment in our public safety. We have to keep mindful of that. And our great public school system, that's what makes our city great. And we have to have those people with a vision and think about Lincoln's future and how we can continue it on this great road that we're on.
So continuing on with your campaign, do you have a website set up yet?
I do. It's real easy. I love it. It's just www.janeraybould.com. JANERAYBOULD.com.
Easy to remember.
It is so easy to remember.
Wonderful. If somebody is interested in helping your campaign, they should go to that website, and
they can go to that website.
For them to volunteer?
There's a place
donate,
and donate. That always helps, because we have a vote by mail campaign. We have a consolidated campaign that benefits all the other candidates too. So fundraising is important. I can't skirt away from that issue. It's real important so that I can get my message out, but that we can help all the other candidates get their message out too.
What are some of the issues that you're most proud of when you were Lancaster County Commissioner, and how is that going to build on your campaign for city?
Well, certainly we talked about the Consolidation Task Force, some of their recommendations. One of the other issues that I'm really proud of, and it goes back to my roots, that I'm really truly a fiscal conservative. I deal with budgets, I'm a businesswoman, I know how to manage finances, and I think we owe it to our taxpayers to be the best stewards of their hard-earned taxpayer dollars as we possibly can. So the one thing that I'm also very proud of is really learning how to manage our structural deficit. And our structural deficit deals with primarily payroll and personnel. One of the things that I was very proud of is working to reduce the retirement match. Before it was 1.5 to 1. So I'm the county, you're the employee, and the county would chip in $1.50, and the county employee would chip in $1. And those benefits are very rich and very generous, but not comparable to what we see out in the private sector. And we have to be mindful that our taxpayers are paying for that. So working with the legislature, and certainly working with all the different unions, and then working with the unrepresented, we were able to get that retirement match reduced from 1.5 to 1 to 1. And that's only for new hires going forward, to better position the county to be able to fund and to continue to fund without annual deficits and without looking at mill levy increases. So I was very proud of that. I was also really very proud of the transition for the Community Mental Health Center. Anytime you privatize a government agency, it's always very difficult, particularly when you're dealing with the most vulnerable people in our community. But we made a point of slowing down the process, investigating the process, working and reaching out on numerous focus groups with the consumer, the family of the consumer, the nonprofit mental health providers in our community, the employees at the Community Mental Health Center. We spent hours and countless efforts at outreach, working with Leadership Lincoln, documenting it all. So we had over 525 comments from all these different groups to make sure that we would be successful, that not one single consumer would be left without treatment or left without medication. And I was very proud of it. It's a very painful process, a very confusing process. And the complexity of what the Community Mental Health Center did for so many that are vulnerable in our community cannot be underestimated. It was a valuable source, but we're fortunate to have a lot of great private providers in our community, Lutheran Family Services and Centerpoint, that have stepped up to the plate and have been able to fulfill that need and do a great job on that. So I would say that is one thing I'm truly proud of being able to slow that down. And really, the other thing I really think I did a good job at is holding the other elected officials accountable, challenging them, asking them tough questions, and making them demonstrate the return on investment, or the increase in this personnel will be able to expedite this amount of government work, or have a return on the investment to the taxpayers.
What are some of the other issues that you see facing the City Council? There's been a lot of talk about the South Beltway for years and years and years. Can you kind of tell us where you think that's going?
Well, I kind of lumped what I see are the three critical issues from my perspective, and you touched on it. South Beltway infrastructure. Infrastructure needs from sidewalks to roads to bridges. And as a county commissioner, we were made very aware that there are many deficient bridges in our county that must need immediate attention and have to be addressed. But the South Beltway is fundamental. We talk about repair and maintenance on the city streets, on the inner city streets. Well, if we could lessen that burden and lessen the traffic loads by completing the South Beltway, we might see a reduction in the cost that we have to spend on the inner city road improvements. I credit the city. We have gotten almost to the completion of the backlog of sidewalks, which is just
amazing.
heroic that they've been able to do that. So infrastructure is clearly one. And then my big thing that I talk about is funding for growth. Funding for the growth in our city, be it the school system, be it on the outskirts of the city as we keep busting out and into the county, because we are growing, our population is growing. Can we fund our public safety needs? Can we fund the other infrastructure needs for new developments, be it the sewer, utility lines, water lines? As we grow our streets as well. Are we able to maintain that? And are we going to be fiscally responsible in projecting for those needs in the future? The last one that I talk about is water. And I don't think a lot of people talk about water, but when I came back to Nebraska, I was really startled by how the Platte River was as dry as it was, and certainly the Loop, parts of the Loop River, and I was really startled by that. And then certainly, we had the drought and water restrictions, and where do we need to position the city of Lincoln for our future? What are our future water resources? With climate change, we have to be very proactive on it, and maybe start looking at how we can look to the Missouri River for tapping into that for water treatment facilities and water wells that we have to tie into. And that's very futuristic, but I think it's something that we have to keep in the back of our mind and have discussions on it now, and to be able to plan for our future.
Another issue that's been in the news lately is certainly public safety, and I think the new radio system that is, one that needs to be upgraded certainly for our emergency calls. Can you kind of speak to that a little bit?
Well, certainly. We are looking to have a bond issue come up for a vote on April 7th, which is the primary, which is coming up very quickly, to allow a 1/4-cent sales tax increase for a very defined period of time, 3 years or less, to allow us to raise enough funds to provide for the public radio system that is over 27 years old. 27 years old. Think of how technology has changed in the last 5 years. And this is a system that is no longer going to be supported by the manufacturer, so we really need upgrades on that. In addition to that, we have to look, because our city has grown, we have to add additional fire stations, and we have to be really smart about how we do that. The one thing I credit Tom Cassidy, who is a former county sheriff, who's former police chief. Tom Cassidy is the director of public safety, and I commend him tremendously for the work that he's done with law enforcement. The city of Lincoln is celebrating record low crime. We haven't had crime rates like this since 40 years ago or more, so we're doing something right. And I really credit Tom Cassidy for redeploying our resources, using our resources wisely, and tracking and trending where crime is occurring, and making sure that we redeploy the officers to either walk that neighborhood, engage the neighborhood in discussion, get them to be partners in keeping their neighbors safe. And I really believe that we are doing the right thing. Of course, public safety is number one, and we will fund public safety, but we have to be very smart and prudent with our resources. We owe it to our taxpayers, and to make sure that we redeploy our existing resources as wisely and as smartly as we possibly can, and continue to work with NeighborWorks. NeighborWorks is in the trenches working with those properties in neighborhoods that are abandoned and run down, and making sure they can convert them as quickly as they can to home for a family that would love to take care of it and make improvements in that neighborhood. And it's just like a catalyst in the neighborhood. One house gets improved, and the neighbor next door starts improving theirs, and it really is so important of a public safety investment to revitalize our neighborhoods.
There is some controversy going back to the 9/11 upgrade of the radio system, that some government entities will not be included in that upgrade. UNL, I believe, and I'm not sure if it's the fire stations or who it is, but could you speak to that a little bit? Why are some of these left off? And there's another issue that I think taxpayers are concerned about, that once a tax is put into place, that it's going to be there forever. It'll be very hard to get rid of it.
Yeah.
How would you respond?
I think I'm
to
going to
that?
address the second part first, because I think that's easiest for me. I know that the city has made a commitment, and I hear that grumbling to, oh, you know, once this tax gets going, they're going to look and say, oh, how convenient it is to just extend it another year. Every single person that I've talked to has made a commitment. Any possible elected official has made a commitment that this will be 3 years or less. We owe it to our taxpayers to live up to this commitment and execute and implement on this bond issue as we have promised them to do that. If we do a good job, just like we've done a great job with Pinnacle Bank Arena, if we do a good job with this public safety initiative, keep it with a defined scope of work, with a defined timeline, with a sunset clause, and actually deliver on everything that we promised in the time we promised to deliver it, then it's up to the voters again. You know, that sales tax drops off and we go back to where it was before. And the only way we can institute another sales tax is by the vote of the people. And it really should be up to them. How we handle it, it will set the framework for future sales tax increases that we might have to go back to look for infrastructure improvements with our roads and bridges, including the South Beltway. So we have to live up to our commitments, and we have to be a good steward as well. Now, going back to the other entities that may or may not be part of the radio system, it's something I think they have the right to make that decision to do so. It depends on funding. You know, this is not cheap. That's why we're going out for the sales tax bond, to see if we can increase it to be able to fund it. I know Lancaster County had a sinking fund, and I know people will say, well, you know, why didn't the city of Lincoln have a sinking fund? And I have to tell you this very quick story. When I got elected, I remember going into the city-county building, and it was right around Thanksgiving, and I just wanted to introduce myself to people in the different departments, and certainly the city, on the city council side. And I thought, oh, people are out because it's the holiday Thanksgiving. The reality is there were no people in the desks that are in the main reception area or the desks that are in the back for city council, because those people, they were either let go or they've had to downsize on the city side. And the city has a great story to tell of each of the departments where they have had to make some tough decisions, and it really has to deal with personnel. So each entity is going to have to come up with their funding for the radio system, and they can partner with the city on it too.
We have just a 1 minute left. Would you just recap again how people can volunteer for your campaign, and what's coming up real quickly? Do you have some fundraisers coming up? Or?
Real quickly, we actually have a fundraiser in Omaha, which is great. It's on March 1st, and it's at the home of Tim Higgins and Patty Zieg, both great Democrats. The reason why it's in Omaha is because they're very concerned about the elections in Lincoln. And Lincoln and Omaha have always partnered and helped out for their elections, and so they're going to be a staunch supporter of the elections that are going on in Lincoln. But again, I encourage people to go to my website. It's www.janeraybould.com, and I'd love for folks to volunteer.
Well, and we've loved having you here as a guest today, Jane. So you have been watching another episode of The Watchful Citizen. Our guest today has been Jane Raybould, a candidate for District 3 City Council. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Come back.
I will.
Okay.